So Tawheed then is the act of ascribing unity to something. And when it comes to Islamic sciences, this was the linguistic definition. When it comes to Islamic sciences, Tawheed refers to the unification of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you like, the uniqueness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when it comes to His lordship, His right to be worshipped, and His names and attributes. So, Tawheed then is that we single out Allah. We make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unique. We make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala one in three concepts, in three aspects. The first one was Tawheed of lordship. And in Arabic this is called, and I want you to write down these Arabic terms, some basic Arabic terms I'm going to dictate to you. Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. Okay, Tawheed of lordship. Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. This Tawheed, or this classification of Tawheed, or this categorization of Tawheed, is obviously based on the Quran and the Sunnah. The meaning of Tawheed al-Rububiyyah is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one, in the fact that He is the only one who created all of mankind and all of the creation. And He is the only one who sustains all of mankind and all of the creation. And He is the only one who has control of all of the creation. So in other words, if someone were to ask you, who is your creator, you would respond, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. Okay? In other words, the fact that we only have one creator, and one sustainer, and one nourisher, and one deity who is in charge of the affairs of all of the creation. Only one. This is based on the Arabic root Rabb, meaning the Lord. You say, Ya Rabb, O my Lord. From the same root is Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, is that the unity of lordship. Inshallah, we will discuss Tawheed al-Rububiyyah in more detail in the weekend section, or in the weekend sessions that we have on the Arkan. The second category of Tawheed that we mentioned is what? Tawheed of? Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, Tawheed of worship. Okay? The second category of Tawheed is Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, or the Tawheed of worship. Brother, there's a space over there if you want. Inshallah. Okay. And I think there's some left too, when the brother comes. The Tawheed of worship. What this entails, this is the natural follow-up of Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. Once you have acknowledged that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your creator, and your only creator, once you have acknowledged that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your sustainer and nourisher, and the one that gives you your life and your food and everything, the logical consequence, or the logical follow-up from that, is that you worship only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can take another one, inshallah. There's one back there, yeah. The logical consequence, or the follow-up of that, is that you acknowledge that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the right to be worshipped. And this is called Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. That the Tawheed of worship. Okay? The last category of Tawheed is the Tawheed of names and attributes of Allah. The Tawheed of Asma'i wa Sifat. Asma' means names, Sifat means attributes. Okay? So the Tawheed of names and attributes of Allah. Tawheed of Asma' wa Sifat. Okay? Names and attributes. Now what does this mean? Again, this is a logical follow-up from Rububiyyah. A logical follow-up from Rububiyyah. If you have acknowledged that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator and the only creator, this automatically implies that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is blessed with certain attributes, certain qualities that are perfect and cannot be, if you like, they are perfect, they are flawless, they are the ones that befit Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, the attribute of creation, the attribute of knowledge, the attribute of power, the attribute of every single perfect attribute, if you like. It belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the Tawheed of Asma'i wa Sifat. Is that we affirm for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala those perfect names and attributes that are found in the Quran and the Sunnah. And we deny from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala every negative attribute. Every negative attribute, we say Allah is free of this attribute. Again, found in the Quran and Sunnah. So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala affirms for Himself, He calls Himself Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, that the ever merciful and the bestower of mercy. He calls Himself Al-Allamul Ghuyub, that the one who knows the unseen. He calls Himself Allah, which is one of the names of Allah. One of the names of Allah is Allah. And we're going to discuss this name inshallah in a little while. He calls Himself Al-Ghaffar, the one who forgives. He calls Himself Ar-Ra'uf, Ar-Rahim, the ever merciful, so on and so forth. All of these names and attributes, they form a part of Tawheed al-Asma'i wa Sifat. That we affirm for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala everything that He affirmed for Himself. And we deny from Him all negative attributes. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has denied from Himself sleep. He says, لَا تَأْخُذُهُ سِنَةٌ وَلَا نَوْمٌ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, neither does slumber overtake Him, nor sleep. He has also denied for Himself having a son or a wife. And he has denied this in very strong terms in the Quran, which is what the Christians accuse him of having a son or a wife. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala denies this because this is an imperfect attribute. Okay? So this comes under Tawheed al-Asma'i wa-Sifat. Now, realize that most of mankind, majority of mankind, they accepted Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. They accepted the Tawheed of Lordship. So if you were to go to a Christian right now, and you ask him, who created you? He will say, God the Father. This is their concept that there is one God. If you ask him, who is the one that gives you your life, and the one that is sustaining you and giving you all that you have of food and water and drink, he will say, God the Father. Okay? Likewise, if you were to go to a Jew, he would also tell you the same thing. If you were to go to many of the different sects and groups that are prevalent in our time and in the past, historically, you will find that almost all of them, even the Hindus, and you say the Hindus, they are idol worshippers. Yes, but you ask them, you worship these idols, yes, but who created you and who created these idols? They will say Krishna or Rama or whatever main deity they have, or Brahma. The different Hindus, they have different deities, the main deity. But all of the Hindus, they go back to one main God. One main God. They say the main God is Vishnu or Rama or Krishna, whatever they have, the one main God. They will go back to him. And they say that all of these other gods, they are subservient or under this main God. Okay? So Tawheed al-Rububiyyah is something which very, very few groups and religions have denied. Even the Romans. Who was the main god of the Romans? And the Greeks. Who was the main god of the Greeks? Zeus. Also the Romans, I don't remember the names, but they had an equivalent of Zeus. You realize did the Romans take from the Greeks or vice versa? The Greeks, the Romans, they just basically took the religion of the Greeks and changed the names and adopted it, right? But the point is, there is one main god. Even in their mythology, there is one main god, Zeus. My point that I'm trying to stress is this Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, is ingrained in the very nature of man. That he realizes and acknowledges that there has to be only one God, one creator. Therefore you find almost all of the religions on the face of this earth that are present, and those that have existed in the past, they never denied God. Atheism has always been a minority. Atheism has always been a minority, because atheism is what goes against this type of Tawheed. The opposite to this type of Tawheed is the rejection of God. Okay? And this has always been a minority. Even in our times, believe it or not, the majority of mankind, as everyone knows, is somehow religious. If you were to ask him, are you an atheist or are you a Christian? The majority of America and the West, they would say, we are Christian. We believe in Jesus Christ or whatever they believe in. In other words, atheism has always been a small philosophy. And you find that even those countries that are supposedly atheists, they do have some type of religious belief, some type of religious act, even though they don't call them as such. Because it's almost impossible to go against this type of Tawheed. Now there was one religion though, that went against this type of Tawheed. And they actually believed that there were two creators, two gods. Who can name to me this religion? Zoroastrians, exactly. The Zoroastrians, they actually went against, you know what the Zoroastrians are? The fire worshippers. Okay, they're Majus, the Parsis, or the Pharisees we call them also in certain countries. Okay, they worship fire. Okay, this group, they actually believed in two gods. They actually believed that there are two gods. They said there's a God of good and then there's a God of evil. Each of these two gods is independent and all-powerful and almighty. Okay, and this is one of the very, very few religions that actually went against Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. There's space inshallah over there. Yeah. So like we said, this type of Tawheed, and we're going to discuss this type of Tawheed in more detail next time. What does it entail? It entails acknowledging that there is only one creator, and one sustainer, and one cherisher. This is what we call Rabb. You know the word Rabb, Arabic word Rabb, everyone knows it. Ya Rabbi, you always call it in dua. In the dua, you say, oh my Lord. It's based from this root, that we say that there is only one God. Now, Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, this is where the majority of mankind has strayed and fallen into error. Okay? What is Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, akhi? What is Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah? No, that's Rububiyyah. What is Uluhiyyah, the second category? Acknowledging that Allah and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the right to be worshipped. This is where the majority of mankind went astray. Okay? Now if you were to ask the Christians, who created you? They're going to say God the Father. Then you ask them, who do you worship? Who do you go through to get to God? Who do you think salvation lies in? They'll say Jesus Christ. Okay? Likewise, you go to the Hindu and you say, who created you or who created your gods? They will say their main god, Brahma or Vishnu or whatever they have. Now you will